Hello, everybody. It has been a minute, or actually more like 8 months, since I think we did our last live Q&A. And I am super excited to be doing these again. We've actually added a follow-on, if you will, after the live Q&A, if you want to engage in a video-based discussion. Or you just don't feel comfortable talking on YouTube. So you have a little bit more privacy at docsnipes.com. And the link is in the chat feed. So if that's something you're interested in, I would love to have you over there. Otherwise, always love to have people here as well. Today, we are talking about betrayal. And the different kinds of betrayal. A lot of people think of betrayal as just interpersonal betrayal, what's going on with themselves. And my dashboard on YouTube is not interacting very well. Can y'all hear me? Hello, Anthony. Good to see you. Music missed, you can hear. All right. Okay, finally, I have my lines. We have this little analytics dashboard that's supposed to show how many people are in the room and everything, and usually it shows up, and it just wasn't. But anyhow, so let's start over again. Today we are talking about betrayal. And a lot of times when people think betrayal, the only thing they think of is in intimate relationships. But betrayal is when people do things that basically we feel go against us in some way, violate our boundaries, or are harmful to us in some way. It can be our friends, it can be our family, it can be our community or our culture, it can be our bosses. How many times have you been at work and somebody got promoted above you, or somebody did something that got you in trouble and you felt betrayed? Okay, we can be betrayed. Or maybe you're at work and all of a sudden they start laying off people and you feel like your company, you've worked there for 10 years, your company owes you some job security and all of a sudden it's gone. Do you feel betrayed? My guess would be yes, I would. So betrayal can come from a lot of different places. And the more places and the more times we are betrayed, the more vulnerable we feel, the more unsafe and disempowered, i.e. traumatized, we feel. And that makes us have difficulty trusting other people. You know, if it happens once, maybe it's a one-off. If it happens repeatedly, then you start going, well, you know, what's wrong here? Why can't I trust people? Betrayal can also open old wounds. Maybe you had traumatic experiences as a child. Maybe you have some insecure attachment going on. And your relationships are relatively healthy. We're just going to hypothesize in the present. But some things you may perceive as betrayal because you are seeing it through the lens of that child who expected constant, unconditional, positive regard from their caregivers. So there are things that we need to recognize. Any experience we have in the present is going to wake up, if you will, on some level, similar memories from the past. Now, we may be able to say, well, that's not applicable in this situation based on the facts in this context at this time. But it is important to recognize that sometimes you may feel betrayed, but remember, feelings are not facts. You want to check the facts in this context at this time. We don't want to make other people carry the baggage that we have gained from dysfunctional other relationships. We don't want to put that on them. But we also need to learn how to trust. And those are the two things we're going to talk about. What experiences of betrayal have you had? How is it impacting each of the pieces of your life? Physical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, which is your self-esteem, emotional, cognitive, and maybe even environmental. And what strategies have you used to start to develop trust in others? Maybe you can't trust that person that betrayed you again. Every situation has its resolution. But how can you move forward so you are not anticipating everybody to betray you? How can you start developing trust in select others? Hello, Crystal. Hello, Harmony. Hello, Anthony. Anthony says, I feel betrayed by life and God itself. That's how insidious and maddening it can be. And yes, God is one I didn't bring up earlier, but a lot of people have times, or maybe their whole life, where they feel betrayed by God. They are told that this is supposed to be a all-loving, all-nurturing, all-caring God, but then something happens. You are in a bad accident. You lose a child. You become homeless. There are a lot of things that happen, and maybe, and in a lot of those cases, a lot of those things were not in your control. So it makes you wonder, is there any organizing force to the universe? And if so, why are they betraying me? Heck, in the Bible, the whole book of Job is about this whole discussion, if you will, or debate about, why is this happening to me? Why are you betraying me? Let's see, Phoenix. Hello, glad to see you. You say, I've been trying to get power over betrayal trauma that my mom caused, and she ended up passing away on the 23rd. I am sorry. And all the truths started coming out. Wow. You think that if this person is no longer in my life, that I can move forward, and nope. That's not it. When they're alive, maybe you hoped that it could be reconciled. Maybe you hoped you'd get an I'm sorry or an explanation. And nope, that didn't happen. And then after they're gone, whatever gone means, all these other things, whatever you're calling the truths, start coming out. And maybe those truths can make you feel better because you're like, oh, I understand more now. Or maybe the truths make you feel worse and more angry and more disempowered and more betrayed. And I don't know exactly which path that your life is taking right now. And that can be just incredibly painful to recognize. And because that person is gone, that takes even more power away from you. That feels even more traumatizing because you can't get angry at them and get any sort of response at this point. Recognizing that whatever it was that your mother did, making sure that you always keep in perspective, this is what mom did. And understanding maybe a little bit why she did it, what looking at it with adult eyes, looking back at it with 20/20 vision, however you want to say it, what may be some other experiences or explanations for why she behaved that way? Does it mean it's all right? Heck no. But does it mean that all of your beliefs about yourself and others that you formed as a result of that betrayal are accurate? Maybe not. Maybe it gives you a different perspective. For example, most of you know that I spent the first 20-odd years of my career working with people with co-occurring issues. And so often the children would blame themselves. I did this, or daddy uses drugs, daddy loves me, or loves the drugs more than he loves me. Because children think dichotomously. You either love me or you don't. And if you love me, you choose me. And if you don't love me, you choose the other thing. And the child internalized that. And that is probably not accurate. Daddy was probably using drugs for other reasons, may have loved the child a lot, but been unable to tolerate the pain. So with adult eyes, sometimes we can look back and reprocess some of the, quote, lessons we learned from the betrayal and identify, are my beliefs about myself and others accurate based on what I learned from that experience? Or did I not have enough information and now I can alter that a little bit? It actually wasn't about me at all. So that can be somewhat helpful. And again, recognizing in the present when other people trigger those feelings in you, that feeling you had when you recognized you were being betrayed by your mom. Not sure what happened, but you're going to have things that trigger that feeling again. It feels like it's happening all over again. Stopping and asking yourself, based on the facts in this context at this time, am I safe? Is this a similar situation? Am I being betrayed? And exploring each situation based on its own merits. And that's hard. Acknowledging how you feel. I'm feeling like I'm being betrayed. All right, I'm going to unhook from that feeling. I'm having the feeling that I'm being betrayed. What am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with this right now in order to move toward my rich and meaningful life? Do I want to dwell on it for a while? Do I want to reprocess it? What is it that I want to do? I am glad people are trying to do good, Harmony. That is what I want in life, is to help people do good and help people live their rich and meaningful life so they can do good. You can't do a lot of good if you're constantly afraid, if you're constantly in pain, if you're constantly exhausted. So my hope is that people will develop some tools so they can start feeling safer and more empowered, which will free up energy that they can use to help create the life that is rich and meaningful to them. What effects would repeated betrayal by different people over decades have? Can it cause CPTSD? Possibly. Chronic post-traumatic stress disorder is characterized by feeling extremely traumatized, extremely unsafe, terrified, and being unable to escape from that situation. And so we think of one of the examples people often give are prisoners of war, or people who are soldiers, people who are in domestically violent relationships where it's just ongoing. There's ongoing stress. You never feel safe, but you don't feel like you can escape for some reason. If you are in multiple different relationships and it seems like, quote, every relationship you get into results in betrayal, then yeah, it can start feeling like other people are completely unsafe. And I encourage people to evaluate, really look at each relationship on its merits, independently of all others, and say, what was happening? What was causing me to feel betrayed? What happened that caused me to feel betrayed? Was it actually a betrayal, which it may have been? And what can I learn from that relationship to stay safe? The other thing I encourage them to do once they look at each relationship independently is to look at all of them together and say, what similarities do all of these relationships have besides me? what similarities do these people have? Am I attracted to people who are needing to be rescued? Am I attracted to people who are self-absorbed? And that can give you some insight into why this is happening. And then it can help you develop some direction on things that you can address, maybe in therapy, maybe with self-help, however you're going to address it. But yeah, I mean, when you have something happen repeatedly, every time it happens, it adds to your experiential vault. So each successive time it happens, you've got more, quote, evidence to make you anticipate this is going to happen again. Why would you want to keep putting your hand on a hot stove if you know that every time you do, you get burned? You're not going to want to do it. It's going to cause a lot of anxiety. It's going to cause a lot of stress. So, yes, can it cause a level of ongoing anxiety, social anxiety? Yes. Would it rise to the level of CPTSD? That depends on the person and the situation and exactly what happened. But instead of focusing on labels, I think it's important to focus on what does it do to you? How does it impact all pieces of your life? When you're betrayed, how does it impact you physically? How do these successive betrayals impact you physically, impact your ability to sleep, impact your hypervigilance, impact your pain and your immunity levels? Because when we're stressed, when we are feeling alone and isolated, those things go up. Those things go up. We can't extricate one piece from all the other pieces. When there's one that is under stress, it's going to add stress and dysfunction to all of the rest of them. The other place where a lot of people can feel betrayed or feel traumatized, and I do have a video on it, is at church and in religious trauma. Because so often people who have been raised in the church or who have developed a relationship with a higher power don't understand the inability for other people, especially those with trauma histories, to actually feel the love, to actually see the meaning in things, to actually feel supported and protected by a higher power that doesn't seem to have ever been around for them. And it's so important. If you feel the love of God, more power to you, it's a blessing. But if you don't, to not tell people, well, you've just got to open yourself up to it. No, that's not how it happens. We need to step back and help people develop a sense of awareness of their higher power, and then slowly develop a trust in their higher power, just like we do in every other relationship. Most people don't just automatically go, okay, I'm going to give everything to God and trust it's okay. Because if you don't know God from Adam's house cat, who's to say that he's going to jump in and help you? So it is really important for believers to not invalidate the feelings of non-believers, to not invalidate the feelings of people who feel betrayed by God. If you feel betrayed by God, then there's some part of you that thinks that there is a God that exists. And if you don't feel like there is one, okay, that's your sense of meaning as well. But we need to be very careful, because too often well-meaning people can come off seeming invalidating and judgmental to those, especially to those who've experienced trauma. Phoenix, I will be doing this every Monday, hopefully henceforth and forevermore. Definitely for the next year or so. But we would love to have you join us in the video discussion afterwards if you decide you want to participate in that. Whoops, this jumped on me again. I saw Crystal talking. Where's Crystal at? Crystal, I have advanced MS. I'm sorry. And I feel like my body and my immune system are betraying me all the time at different degrees. It's like, what do you do to get mad at yourself for attacking yourself? Totally can empathize. My daughter has POTS and fibromyalgia. I wondered for a while if she had MS. It is maddening, to say the least. That's not even infuriating to have these different challenges, and you never know what each day is going to bring. Developing grieving in the case of a chronic illness, sometimes after being betrayed by your body, and you know that your body's going to continue to betray you. So, all right, we just have to make peace with it, and somehow we know right now you're kind of at war with your own body. All right. Being strategic is what we do in our household. Being strategic when Haley has a flare, instead angry about it, she's gotten to the point where she's like, well, expletive, this sucks. And what do I need to do? Do I need to stay in bed for a couple of days? Do I need to adjust my diet? What is it that I need to do? And she has gotten very good at what I'll call primitive biohacking, if you will. And she's aware of her triggers. It doesn't mean that she can stop all of her flares, but she is very, very mindful. She's kind of like a general on the battlefield, trying to anticipate what the enemy's next move is going to be. And I hear you. It sucks to feel like you have to be that way with your own body constantly. And it is sort of like being a soldier in a foxhole. And focusing on the things that you do have power over. Because the more stressed you are, the more flare you're going to have. And yes, you can be angry. Anger is a feeling. And anger is a feeling that tells us we are unsafe. And when your body is attacking you, you are unsafe. Feel that anger. Say, I am really pissed off today that I don't feel well. And I'm having this feeling. All right. Now, what is the best way to use my energy to move toward a rich and meaningful life? Because unfortunately, your body's not going to ever apologize for betraying you. And figuring out how to live with something, if you will, that's untrustworthy. How can I live with this and have a rich and meaningful life so I'm not constantly feeling angry that I am afflicted, if you want to use that word, with MS. And it's terrifying. There is a lot that people with chronic illnesses have to grieve, to be angry about, to feel betrayed about. And processing that anger is so important, because holding on to it and saying, well, I shouldn't feel angry about this, or it doesn't do me any good to feel angry about this. Well, it is what it is. So let's let it out. Let's figure out how to manage that anger, if you will. And I don't mean to make it sound simpler than it really is. It is exhausting, and it is a constant challenge, because what works on Tuesday, at least for Haley, what works on Tuesday for her may not work on Thursday, or what worked last month may not work this month. So she's constantly trying to modify and tweak things and understand. And she has to be so much more hypervigilant, which is exhausting. I am not as familiar with all of the things that trigger MS flares and progression, but recognizing, and I think that's a great point that you bring up, your own body can betray you. When I had, and again, this pales in comparison, but when I had my son, he was born at 29 weeks, and I felt very betrayed by my own body. I wasn't able to do the one thing that women have been doing for, millions of years correctly. And I felt betrayed. I felt betrayed by the doctor. I had anger to go around, but we can feel betrayed by our own body. We can feel betrayed by our own mind when people start developing dementia or Alzheimer's. That is a common thing that they say is, I feel like my brain is betraying me. It's abandoning me before I'm ready to go. And it's infuriating. And unfortunately, with betrayal, just like with people who are toxic, you may never be able to change them. You may never be able to find a reason, an understanding of why did this happen? Hurricane Helene, why did that happen? Hurricane Idalia and Katrina and Harvey and all those others. Why did that happen to those people? Why were they betrayed? And were they put in harm's way when other people weren't? How do you find meaning in that? And that's part of the spirituality aspect of the pieces model, is trying to develop some sense of understanding of how things in the world are connected and acceptance of our ability to not be able to control everything. And that's the part I hate. I'm a control freak. I'll admit it. And I know that comes from my own trauma history, but it can be absolutely paralyzing when you feel like life is unfair, not only to you, but to countless other people and creatures. Self-betrayal is definitely another issue that we need to take a look at, because we often, not only can we, but we often betray ourselves. We say what we think we should. We do what we think we should, even if it's not necessarily in line with our values. And we need to really have a check-in with ourselves and figure out, why are we being inauthentic? Why are we going against ourselves? And is it worth it? Sometimes silence is the better part of valor, but we do need to, number one, develop a sense, and we're going to talk about this on Wednesday. Interesting that you bring that up, Anthony. Develop a sense of intimacy and awareness with ourselves. How do we feel right now in the moment? What do we need in order to live authentically and not betray ourselves? What do we need to do in this relationship or in this situation? And it's hard, especially if you don't feel like you've got a support system. But even if you do, it can be really hard to be true to yourself in an environment like we have right now that is so insidious in a lot of ways. I mean, you just don't know who's going to, turn on you, who's going to, and I sounds paranoid when it comes out of my mouth, but it's true. I mean, employers will go through your social media and give you a job or not give you a job based on what they see on your posts. So if you are in a field that may not align with 100% of your beliefs and actions, what do? Do you behave authentically and, here I am, take me or leave me? Or do you put on a facade in order to get what you want? And if you betray yourself, what impact does that have? Is it a little betrayal or is it a big betrayal? People who are in recovery, when they relapse, some people will look at that as a self-betrayal. I was doing so good and then I chose to pick up. I chose to use again instead of calling my sponsor, instead of, calling a friend or going on a walk. Or not everybody's into 12 steps. I get that. And understanding what happened. And when you betray yourself, why? Always going back to the why and was it worth it? Why did I feel that betraying my own thoughts, wants, and needs was a better choice than setting boundaries and maintaining them? I don't know. Sometimes we do it for other people. Maybe you stay in a bad relationship, quote, for the kids. Maybe you stay in a bad relationship because I have a couple people that I know right now that they were in a really bad car wreck over a decade ago. And one of the partners was very severely injured, spinal injuries, took months before they were able to get out of the hospital, still experienced chronic pain. The other partner, the one that was driving, didn't get injured nearly as bad, but is ruled by guilt. And everything they do is out of guilt. They betray their own thoughts, wants, and needs to stay in this unhappy relationship because they feel it's their duty. That's a choice that they make. And if they do it with their eyes wide open, okay. Everybody is entitled to make their choices, even if it does betray something that is near and dear to them. Sometimes they feel that other things are more important than this aspect of myself that I'm betraying right now. Because we're not just one simple organism. Sometimes you have to betray certain aspects of yourself to support other aspects. When you have addiction problems and can't follow your own rules, it's important to step back and look at why not? What's triggering your behaviors? What's triggering you to not follow your rules? Why is it that you're not able to stop and make a different choice? Let's look at those environments. Let's look at what safety nets you have in place. Let's look at times that you have been able to follow your rules and what was different. Instead of just looking at the problem, look at the solution. When you have been able to follow your rules, what was different? Maybe you had supportive people in your environment, like literally in your physical environment. Maybe you were in a different place. Maybe your apartment is triggering for you. So that's the other thing, not only to explore the problems or the obstacles that are keeping you from following your rules, but again, exploring times when you have followed them, even if for just a little bit, when you have followed them, what was different? And try to increase that until you are in a place where your ability to follow your rules is stronger, when you feel more empowered, when you feel safer. Oops, let's see. Phoenix, I'm reading your things. Okay, so When your mom passed, you felt like she was betraying you for not taking care of herself, not doing what she needed to do. But then you found out later she was doing the very best that she could. So you feel guilty now. And it happens. I like to believe that people can come to an understanding. Obviously, your mom didn't tell you all these things for a reason. She didn't want you to worry, or she knew you had other stuff going on and she didn't want to burden you with it. That's what some people do. That's what some moms do, and dads and sisters and what have you. Recognizing that that was her choice. She knew you were angry. She probably picked up on the sense that you felt betrayed, and she made the choice at that point to try to protect you from the realities of what was going on. And my sense is, and of course, I'm not your mom, but my sense is she has no regrets because she felt like she was being true to herself and doing what she believed was the right thing for a mom to do in that situation. Now, you may disagree. Other people may disagree, and that's okay. That's your right. So from that perspective, now that you know all of these truths that you didn't know, and it's like, oh my God, would your mom, in retrospect, would your mom want you to continue feeling guilty and beating yourself up for behaving the way you behaved, knowing that she knew the whole time that you didn't have all the information? You can only make choices and act based on the information you have at the time. Facts in this context at this time. That's just something I would encourage you to ponder. Maybe you feel like you deserve to feel guilty for a while, and you have a right to grieve in your own way. And your mom just passed, so everything is raw right now. I feel confident saying that. Everything is raw right now. You have a right to grieve in your own time. Not only grieve the loss of your mom, but also grieve the loss of the relationship that you could have had the last few years or however long it was going when you were angry with her. And maybe figure out something, glean something from that can help you in the future when people seem like they are betraying you. Maybe that will encourage you to consider what else might be going on. Now, you can consider until the cows come home. We don't want to make excuses for people. You have a right to your feelings. You had a right to feel betrayed. If she was doing all this stuff and, it felt like she was abandoning you, it looked like, based on all the facts you had at that time, it looked like she was betraying and abandoning you. How else could you have felt? But that's an interesting question, Cindy. Why does betrayal feel like a gut punch? How is it different from a letdown of your expectations of someone that has hurt you, especially a close family member? How do we cope with either? Betrayal is often something that is a single occurrence. And a lot of times when we feel betrayed, it's because it was somebody that we trusted. And betrayal is, when we think of our feelings on a continuum, my understanding, or my definitions, I guess, the letdown, when somebody disappoints you, number one, sometimes it may not be intentional. So yes, we're sad, we feel disappointed, but we don't feel betrayed. Betrayal always feels like it's intentional. And that makes most of us feel more vulnerable because somebody that we trusted, somebody that we loved intentionally did this, or we think intentionally did this. If I had to speculate, that may be one of the reasons that betrayal feels more like a gut punch, because it feels like they had more control and more malice associated with it versus disappointing us, letting us down. Somebody who doesn't show up to our soccer game disappoints us. But is it a betrayal? No. We probably wouldn't go that far, even if they intentionally didn't show up to the soccer game. We probably wouldn't call that a betrayal. But betrayal, it often is something extremely important to us in some way, and or it feels like the person who betrayed us did it intentionally. And that's where it comes from. How do we deal with it? Looking at, to the best of our ability, the facts in this context at this time, recognizing that some people's behaviors are going to be toxic. Some people's behaviors, for whatever reason they've got going on, all their stuff, their behaviors are going to be toxic, and they will stab you in the back just as quick as they'll smile to your face. And I wish I didn't say that. I didn't have to say that, but I've met people that are like that. I think we all have. If betraying you gives them an advantage, they're going to betray you in a heartbeat. Those people are engaging in toxic behaviors, and we need to learn how to identify that, be mindful of it, and set boundaries and protect ourselves from that. If I sense that somebody is using me or will turn on me at the drop of a hat, I'm probably going to back away from that person as quickly as possible. Recognizing that when people betray us, when people let us down, most of the time, it's not our fault. Most of the time, we didn't have much, if anything, to do with it. Now, I say most of the time, because especially when it comes to disappointment, we need to evaluate, were our expectations of that person too high? Were our expectations of that person based on our love for that person and what they needed or what we wanted? Give you an example. Sometimes as parents, we have a vision of how our kids are going to grow up and what their lives are going to be like and the choices they're going to make. And, they're going to be president of the United States. And then our kids don't choose that path. Yet the path they choose makes them happy. So are we disappointed? Do we grieve the loss of that dream that we had that they'd become president? Well, yeah, it's a little selfish, but yeah, we grieve the loss of that dream. However, hopefully we can look at it and embrace the fact that as a parent, what I really want for my kid is that they be happy. And if what makes them happy is what different than what I want to make them happy, it is what it is. That's not my choice. And so sometimes when people let us down, it's because we had wrong expectations. Sometimes when people betray us, they may have had the best of intents. I was watching a TV show, and Grey's Anatomy, for those of you who've ever watched it. Yeah, I'm a little late to the game, but whatever. And one of the doctors had a traumatic experience, and she had developed obsessive compulsive tendencies as a way of trying to cope with that trauma. But she was unwilling to get help. She was on some level aware that her behaviors were problematic, but she was unwilling to get help for whatever reason. And, we could go into a whole class on why that might have been. But her husband ended up turning her into the board, and the board made her get treatment. Did she view that as a complete betrayal? Heck yeah. She was infuriated. However, was her husband trying to betray her, or was this his last effort? I mean, he had tried everything else. Was this the last thing he knew how to do, because she was going down a very dangerous path, and actually, becoming a worse doctor? So was it betrayal? I'm hoping that eventually she will come to the understanding that he didn't betray her. He did what was authentic to him and he felt would ultimately be in her best interest. So we want to look at what was the intent behind the betrayal. And again, sometimes it was purely malice. And all right, let's learn from that and set boundaries and move on. Sometimes maybe it was different. But we can't make that decision. We can't do that in analysis when we are in our emotional mind, when we're feeling enraged, when we're feeling disappointed, when we're feeling crushed. We need to wait till we can get into our wise mind and get all the facts to try to figure out, was this betrayal or was this a bad choice? Was this person intentionally trying to harm me, or did they do something that I had wished they wouldn't have done? There are a lot of nuances to disappointment and betrayal and how we deal with it. C. Lee says that they are triggered by dishonesty and lies. How many of us, and I'm not trying to make light of this, I just want C. Lee to have a support, to not feel isolated in feeling triggered by dishonesty and lies. How many of us feel like there's impending betrayal when we start noticing dishonesty and lies in our relationships? A lot of times before the big betrayal comes, there's little betrayals. A lot of times before the big relapse comes in addiction, there's emotional relapse, there's behavioral relapse before you actually pick up. So there are a lot of little things, betrayal, dishonesty, lies with ourselves, with others, before the big betrayal. And yeah, when you start feeling that, it's like, okay, just like when a storm's coming in, that's what this dishonesty and lies are about. The clouds that come in, then that's the dishonesty. And then they start to darken up. Those are the outright lies. And then you start having the thunder and lightning. And that's when the storm starts coming in, the storm of betrayal. But as soon as the clouds start coming in, you start getting this feeling. It's like, oh, crap, this is going to be a bad one. I know I can watch out our windows. We live kind of up on a ridge, and I can watch the storms come in. And storms typically are more powerful the more linear, the more demarcated the dark clouds are from the light clouds. If they're all kind of mishmashed together, it's probably not a super strong storm. But if you can see this front line just barreling at you, it's going to be something. So I can see it. And then, I start feeling a little anxiety because, of course, we live in Dixie Alley, which is kind of like Tornado Alley. And my anxiety starts rising because I'm like, okay, are we going to have a tornado? And I know you're like, tornadoes, betrayal, where are you going with this doc? Well, same thing with these lies. It's kind of like you see that front coming and you start feeling when that happens, You start feeling the same way you felt when you were betrayed before. So you're hunkering down and waiting for the big betrayal. And yeah, it's triggering. It's important to examine, because sometimes what we think are dishonesty and lies, maybe we don't have all the facts, or I don't know. Yeah. Let's assume that sometimes what we think somebody's being dishonest and they just have a different perception, or we don't have all the facts. But it's important to get the facts. But it's also important to call people on their BS. And if they are being dishonest, to start setting boundaries with those people, because we know that they are showing us that there are we cannot trust their behaviors. And I always try to separate the person from the behavior. But a person who repeatedly exhibits untrustworthy behaviors is probably not a person we want to be around. And so we need to learn, how do we protect ourselves? How do we, go about this? In recovery, when people go to residential or maybe they can do it through outpatient, some people can do it through outpatient, they get into remission, they get into recovery. But some of their behaviors are going to be similar in recovery as they were in their active addiction. They're going to get tired sometimes. They're going to have bad days and they're going to withdraw sometimes. And the loved ones often assume that when you're tired and you're acting withdrawn, it means you're relapsing. That may not be it. So there may be assumptions being made where you think the person is lying to you, but they're actually telling you the truth. So it's important to get the facts, but if you do determine that they're lying or being dishonest, confronting it if it's safe, and then figuring out how to keep yourself safe from that. If they continue doing it, what are you going to do? If you're interacting with somebody and you're talking and every 2 or 3 sentences, they pop you in the nose, not appropriate behavior. But if they do, you'd be like, that's not okay. Don't pop me in the nose. And you keep talking and they keep doing it. Are you going to sit there and take it? Or are you going to say, no, this conversation's over because I'm tired of being popped in the nose? Okay, one more. Sia says, I used to work 2 jobs and sleep every 3 days. In May, I was burned out and diagnosed with epilepsy. In order to take my exam for clinical psychology last week, I stopped my epilepsy medication so that I can be more active. I am so angry and betrayed by my body right now. And it is infuriating when there's something that we've worked for so long, or something that we so want to do and our body just won't let us do it. It is infuriating. And I struggle not with epilepsy, but with adrenal insufficiency. And if I push it too hard, I can go into an adrenal crisis. And that's bad, real bad. However, there's a part of me that, I want to change the world. I want to help everybody feel happy. And I will push it. I'll feel really good one day and I'll push it. And then I will be in bed for 3 days after that, if not worse. And so I hear what you're saying and the frustration that you can't have the life that you want while you're on your epilepsy medication is something that's going to be important at some point to grieve if your doctors can't get that figured out. There may be other things that you can do in order to stay on your medication and not feel as drained by it. I don't know. I'm not familiar with epilepsy. But exploring different options that may help with epilepsy can also be important. Now, again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not recommending this at all. However, my husband has a good friend who was diagnosed with epilepsy, and she went on the paleo diet, and she has felt so much better ever since. I don't know where she's at as far as the levels of her medication, but exploring what other people with epilepsy have done in order to better manage their symptoms and the side effects of that medication can help you feel empowered against the enemy that is epilepsy. Okay, everybody, it is that time. It is almost 12, so I am going to log off here. Again, if you are wanting to continue this discussion today, you can come over to Doc Snipes and join me. We have a video chat room set up, and I am happy to chat with you. We will have that video chat room open after every live Q&A that I do. That way, people who didn't feel comfortable talking or who want to go into a little bit more depth, etc., can do so in a more private and kind of human environment, since we'll have the video. But I appreciate everybody so much for being here today on this inaugural, I guess, relaunch of our weekly live Q&As. We will be having them every Monday for an hour, so you don't have to pay to play. You can come and participate in the discussion on YouTube, and you can also obviously attend my live Wednesday webinar if you're interested in the topics that we are discussing on that day. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you again so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.